Okay. So we are here with...
Ivan from Men Without Hats.
Okay. Now, Ivan, you had a long career, but let's go to the beginning of it. What made you even want to become a musician? What was the spark that ignited this whole career?
I think it was just the movement itself, the sort of punk rock, new wave movement at the end of the 70s. There was sort of a big change in culture, a big change in everything, in art and music, and the way people were dressing, their haircuts, everything. So it was a very exciting time, and I was coming out of the 70s with a background of progressive rock music and disco, so that those things kind of blended together and helped me sort of along the way to form a new wave, electronic new wave band.
And how did you transition from being a punk rocker into a new waver?
It was, well, I was ready. I was taking piano lessons all my life, so I was classically trained pianist. And I made a conscious decision at one point that I wanted to make songs that people remembered, that people could sing, that had melodies, that were friendly songs.
Did you grow up in the musical home?
Yeah, I did. My mom was a teacher at McGill University for 25 years. She taught voice. My dad was an amateur musician.
So how long did it take before this dream became a reality?
Not too long. I was in McGill University. I was studying communications, and I met some fellow musicians. We started a band, and it was almost an overnight success. It took about 3 years. So that's kind of how long it took.
Now, the name Men Without Hats, how did that come about? Because it feels like a name like that would make more sense now than it did back then. So again, futuristic thinking.
Yeah, it was the type of thing that basically that the type of hat we wear defines who we are, and so it was kind of just a sort of a statement on that.
How did you go about shaping your sound? Because once you get into a type of music, it takes a while before you find your own calling.
Yeah.
So how long did it take before you actually became what we know you as today?
Oh, it didn't take very long. It was, a lot of experimentation. I played in a couple of other bands too, just trying things out. So it was a couple of year process.
Now, at that time, New Wave was getting huge in Europe. There were a lot of bands coming out, a lot of synthesizer bands. Things were big, and to be honest with you, the United States had no answer to that, but Canada did.
Yeah, Canada had quite a few techno bands. There was quite a scene.
I mean, I recall growing up in Europe, once Men Without Hats took off, there was another band called Trans X, which also took off in Europe.
Trans X, yeah, Pascal Longuerant. We actually went to school together. We actually played in a band together, in high school. And I see him regularly on this circuit that we're on this sort of retro futura regeneration circuit that we're doing. He's actually doing a show now in LA now in Berlin, and Tony Hadley.
Okay, that's the odd thing. I actually mentioned Trans X and I get a response.
No, he actually did a cover of Safety Dance too. So.
So Men Without Hats. Let's bring out the first album, the historic
The Rhythm of Youth.
Rhythm of Youth.
Yeah.
The album that started it all.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about this record? How was it made? Did you anticipate the success it was going to have?
Well, success for us in those days was being able to make a second record, And success for us in those days was seeing our name in a magazine or in a newspaper, or seeing our song on the charts. So it was a success for us. We were in studio making the next record. We were halfway through making the next record when the dance remix of Safety Dance went #1 on the Billboard charts. And we didn't even have an American record contract at that time. So that kind of started the ball rolling. We got an American record deal. We had to get back on a bus and promote Rhythm of Youth again. So it was a strange kind of record for us. It kind of had two lives.
Now, when Safety Dance became a huge hit, did you anticipate when you were writing that song that it's going to have such an impact?
when you're in this business, you think that everything you write is going to have a big impact, you know. So, or else we wouldn't be in this business. But in Canada, we released it. It wasn't even the first single. We released "I Got the Message" as a first single, and "I Got the Message" went top 40. I think it went number 15 or 12 or something like that. We released the Safety Dance, and it did about the same thing. It didn't go top 10 in Canada, but we were happy. We saw our song, you know, on the Canadian charts and on a couple of other worldwide charts. So we were happy. That was success for us.
And obviously Europe took to the band because it was so close to what was happening in Europe.
Yeah.
In fact, I found out that the video for Safety Dance was done in Europe as well, right?
Yeah, it was done just outside of Bath in West Kenton. You know, I grew up listening to a lot of bands, a lot of European bands, a lot of German bands, Kraftwerk, and a lot of krautrock bands, you know, the stuff. And so that's why I guess there's an affinity with, you know, with Europe. I think there is a bit of European sound in us. People didn't really know where we came from, you know, when we first came out.
Did you get a chance to tour Europe back in those days?
No, we didn't.
And why didn't that happen? I mean, it feels like a natural thing to do.
Yeah, it does. We spent a lot of time touring the States, basically. We spent most of our time touring the States. That's where our biggest market was.
Now, over the years, Safety Dance became its own brand. How do you view the song? Kind of like a double-edged sword, but on the other hand, it's a great song that people would give arm and leg to have.
Yeah, no, it's all good to me. I enjoy playing it. I enjoy the smile on people's face when I play it. It's all good.
Throughout the years, what was the oddest place you came across that song?
Oh, so many places. I mean, my favorite sort of use of it was the Beavis and Butthead sort of parody, the review when they're watching the video.
Oh, the commentary?
The commentaries on the video, and they say, "Who is this, Michael Jackson?" I thought that for me is pretty funny.
Yeah, I was surprised to see the kids using, and I mean, the song used in a bunch of kids shows too.
Yeah, like Glee used it. It's been used a lot. I mean, basically, the fact that it's been used so much is what has allowed me to come back and tour now. It's like the fact that my songs are still being played, are still in pop culture, are still, you know, resonating with people. I mean, that's what I have to be thankful for.
Were you surprised the other songs from the album didn't do as well? I mean, there were a lot of great songs. I recall having the 7-inch with Safety Dance, and on the other side was Living in China, and that was a great song, and I'm thinking, why is that not a hit?
Yeah, well, you know, it's just, you'll have to buy the book, I guess.
Will there be a book?
There'll be a book, and it's a long story. But, yeah, it's just one of those things. It would take too long to explain why.
Yeah. Well, it didn't stop there, right?
No.
There was another album, like you said, you were making a record while the first one took off, so
yeah.
Let's introduce the second album.
Yeah, so the second one was Folk of the 80s Part 3, and we, after we toured for Safety Dance for a couple of years, we went back and finished it. But by then, it was a different ball game by then, so...
What do you think changed?
Well, a lot of things changed. I mean, you know, the fact that we'd had the whole success and everything like that, it was just a different world for us, you know. And so to go back into studio and sort of pick up where we left off 2 years before was not only hard, it was not very enjoyable. So this record sort of, for me, is kind of an unfinished record. It's something that we finished almost reluctantly, you know. It wasn't done the way we wanted it to be done.
When you play some of these songs live now, how do people react?
They like them. I mean, the songs are the songs. Where Do the Boys Go became like a big sort of gay disco hit and everything like that. So we get a lot of reactions when we play a lot of this stuff. We don't play much off this record. You know, on this tour we're playing pretty much everything we play comes from Rhythm of Youth. We play Pop Goes the World, obviously, but most of the material comes from these two records.
Now, what happened after this? Because then you kind of disappeared for a few years, but then came back really, really strong with another hit. So even those people who call you one-hit wonder don't really have the right to do that.
No.
Because you are a two-hit wonder, and then they were great songs.
We were actually voted #1 two-hit wonder by Rolling Stone magazine last year.
And
Yeah.
the album we're talking about is called,
Pop Goes the World.
yes, which was another MTV darling record.
Yeah, so for this record, we changed labels, we changed management, we changed bands. I got a divorce, sold my house. Weather kind of changed. I became a vegetarian. I started being nicer to people. So that was that record.
Mm-hmm. What impact do you think that one made, from perspective of time?
Oh, it's and like I said, Pop Goes the World's a big soccer chant now all over the world. So I mean, it's had some impact.
Outstanding. Now, the 80s ended with another record.
Yeah, this was the record that we recorded. Adventures of Women and Men Without Hate in the 21st Century. It was recorded after the Pop Goes the World tour with the same band that toured. All the people that played on this record were in the live band for the Pop Goes the World tour that we toured across America. I don't know, we did about 60 shows across
How did
America.
things change musically for you at that point?
They were just getting. The band was getting bigger. It was a big sort of. It was a bigger band. It also was a change of labels. It was, like I said, you're gonna have to buy the book. It's a long story.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long story.
What I really like on this album was an interesting ABBA cover.
Mm-hmm.
And being an ABBA fan, I'm very reluctant when it comes to cover songs. There are only two covers I accept, yours and the one by Blamage.
Yeah.
Because as simple as ABBA is, it's kind of difficult to cover that. What was that experience like for you?
It was, I've always been a big ABBA fan. I was a fan of ABBA when it wasn't cool, so no, we still play this one live. I mean, we're playing this one on this tour too, and it gets a great reaction. It's a great song, great band.
In one of the songs on that album, you were singing that the 90s are coming.
Yeah.
What were the 90s like when they actually came?
They were dark. They were pretty dark.
Mm-hmm. And then the only album from the 90s would be Sideways.
Sideways, yeah, the guitar record from...
That's right.
Yes.
Complete change of direction. Instead of synthesizers, it was filled with guitars. How did that happen?
It happened out of just jamming with friends, with Michel Away Langevin from Voivod, John Kasner from the Doughboys, and we would jam late into the night after the bars closed, and this is the result. I started writing songs. I owed the record label an album, and they let me do this one. They were nice enough to let me do this one. And it was beginning of the 90s, so it was a good trip.
What reactions did you get from the fans, seeing especially a big change in direction, sound?
Yeah, no, not too many people liked it. I mean, the people that like it, but a lot of people don't understand it. So it's whatever. It was a fun record to make.
Now, one thing you already actually mentioned a little bit is the lineup of this album. I think two people are involved. You're still involved with them. One of them, I believe, John Kasner, who's now your manager. Is that the same one?
John Kasner, yeah.
Okay.
Manager.
And also your involvement with Owe and Voivod continues to this very day. Can you explain that friendship?
Well, we met in Montreal. We were just hanging out. I was introduced by John Kasner, actually.
Mm-hmm.
He hooked us up together. We both have a love for science fiction and comic books, and I've been sort of helping him with. He's been making comics all along. I sort of help proofread his English in the comic books these days, and that's about all I do these days. I've written some lyrics with him and done some recording on some of the records, but we're just mostly friends.
And I also recall that he managed to design a T-shirt for Men Without Hats.
Yeah, he made our last European, or actually our first two European tours ago. He designed the T-shirt that I wore.
It has a very Voivod feel, but it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
I did see it online, never in person, but it's really great.
Cool.
One thing about this album that only a few years ago, Prague magazine included it in the section they call Prague, but not as you know it, where they kind of look for albums that are not obviously Prague, but have a lot of Prague tendencies. So there is a lot of acknowledgement for this album years and years later. Do you think that's kind of rewarding?
Well, yeah, I mean, right down to the Genesis lettering with the sideways that I copied off the Foxtrot record.
True, and one of the songs is Van der Graaf Generation Blues, which again, it kind of really spells out another innuendo.
Yeah, well, that's it. They got it.
Then a long break. The 90s, like you said, were not kind, but what was happening in your personal life at that time? Or musical life?
Well, I put out a solo record.
Mm-hmm.
I put out The Spell. I met my second wife. Basically, it was just a time of transition, basically, and took some time off from the record industry. Took some time off.
And 90s were not really friendly, especially with the turn of events when grunge took over and a lot of things that we were used to, were sidelined.
Yeah, they were. It was all. There was no synthesizers wanted.
Even the way people looked. I mean, you went from a glamorous look to people who looked like they were homeless.
Yeah, it was a dark times.
Yeah,
dark times.
You did not give up music, obviously, right?
No, quite.
So, what happened before you came back? I recall seeing you in Chicago with Human League.
Yeah,
and that was a great show.
Yeah, about 6 or 7 years ago, I got a phone call, and I was asked if I could put the band back together again and go back on tour, opening up for the Human League and for B-52s in a lot of places. And that was the start of it all. And since then, we've been back on the road. Put out a record in 2012.
Yeah, how did that album come about? Because nobody really expected that there would be a new album because you had so many hits that you could easily play. But you came back with a monster.
Yeah, I just started writing songs.
Maybe show the records and.
Yeah, I just started writing songs in the back of the bus on this Human League tour. I bought an iPad. iPad has just come out, and I got GarageBand and just started writing songs and got back from the tour, and we just decided to go in the studio and make a record.
What was your mindset like when you were writing these songs?
Oh, this record actually is very personal. It was kind of the breakup of my second marriage and my son within the whole thing. So it was a very personal, actually very, very personal record. And but I watershed. Everything comes out at once, so I don't really work it. It just flows out, and it was all done relatively quick.
What about musically? Because to me, that album is probably the most natural follow-up to your first album.
Yeah, well, we went into studio with that in mind. We said to ourselves, we're going to make a record that sounds like it was recorded a month after Safety Dance. We went in and got the same gear. I wrote the songs the same way. We actually limited ourselves on the computer to 24 tracks on a lot of the songs, just to give it that feel. Just so we'd have to make the choice before we went in. And today you can record 1 million tracks and choose it later and get somebody else to choose it for you. But back in those days, you had 24 tracks or whatever you had, 16, 8, and you had to choose. You had to make a decision and find the right sound to put on that track. And so there was a lot more work went into it, I think, before the recording process. Whereas now people just throw things down because there's no limit to how much you can throw down. So.
Were you happy with the overall effect?
Yeah. I think our fans were too. I think we made the record our fans wanted us to make. I don't think they wanted a dubstep record or a rave record or a whatever record. They wanted a Men Without Hats record, and for them that's something that sounds like Rhythm of Youth or folk of the 80s or even pop music.
Mm-hmm. Now, the album is obviously full of songs that have hit potential. Were you surprised that no radio really touched it that much?
No, I wasn't. It's a different world now.
It is.
It's different ways. It's a youth market first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And we hadn't been around for 30 years. I'd be pretty surprised if somebody picked up on it. Actually, it's an independent release. There was no major behind it. We put it out ourselves. It was pretty much totally for the fans.
I absolutely love the album, and even a few years later, I'm still not bored of it.
Good.
I still listen to it with pleasure. A lot of songs that probably, if they came out a few years back, They would have been probably
Yeah.
staples to your concerts, and,
Yeah.
and maybe even, who knows, maybe there's another safety dance lurking somewhere in there,
Oh,
and I think that it is. Will there be another album?
There might be. There might be. I'm not saying yes or no. There's, like I say, I watershed, so I don't work on the records. They just come out, and whenever they do. So there might be. I don't know myself.
Now, one thing that is very distinct about Men Without Hats are your vocals. Bottom line is, if the band has you, it has the sound.
Yeah.
How would you describe your vocals, and what were you influenced to sing this way?
Oh, I was influenced by guys Brian Ferry, David Bowie, a lot of people. Mick Jagger.
And you also told me once that your mom is actually your personal vocal coach.
Yeah, she used to be, not anymore, but
Okay.
Colin is helping me out now, my brother Colin.
How does that work?
It's just, he knows a lot about it, and we just work on it together.
One other bit of info. We happen to be in Illinois, and you were born in Illinois, I believe,
Yeah.
right? In Champaign.
Champaign, yeah.
So you're not completely a Canadian, you have a lot of US roots.
Yeah.
How did that happen that you ended up in Montreal?
Well, my dad, I was born here. My dad was getting his PhD, his master's and his PhD at the University of Illinois. And his first job was at the University of Montreal. So we moved there.
Finally, what's the best thing about being in Men Without Hats?
Getting to do these shows, getting to see the new fans, getting to hook with the fans up again. It's great.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mark.